WORQ, Green Bay.
The following program is a presentation of Lakeshore Communications, Inc. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of Lakeshore Communications, Inc., its sponsors, or donors.
3, 2, 1, 0.
From the studios of WORQ in Wisconsin, this is the Stand Up for the Truth podcast. Today's issues, overlooked headlines, and biblical observations, equipping the remnant around the globe. Got your sword handy? This is Stand Up for the Truth.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ. David Fiorazo today with Pastor Chris Quintana, Mary Danielson, and we are getting ready to dive into some things that might not get a lot of press and might not be discussed even in the Christian church. So things including prophecy, politics, Joe Biden.
You can register anytime today. Say you got to work and you can't come till later. No problem. We got you even tomorrow morning, because tomorrow morning is a 12-hour day. So, yes, Saturday. What day is it? Help.
Today's Friday.
Yes, today's Friday. So Saturday is a huge part of the conference. Saturday is the long day. So you can register at the door over there in Appleton, and we are really excited. And our guest today, he is kicking off the conference. The first session is at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock today, Pastor Chris Quintana. That's a lot of pressure
to
absolutely. Open it up, and you're going to close it Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm up first? Just kidding. Yeah,
so
1 o'clock.
you were in Madison, was it Wednesday night?
Wednesday night, yeah. So my normal Wisconsin trip is to come in on Wednesday and go spend the evening with the fine people at the Calvary Chapel there in Madison, and then go out to Manitowoc on Thursday nights, and then if the opportunity presents itself to be here with you guys on Friday morning.
And Jeff will be with us too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Madison, Calvary Chapel, Madison. Yep. Jeff, he's also on Q90. He'll be speaking
3:20 today. Jeff Solwald after T.A. McMahon. And then tonight, Tommy Ice.
Yes.
And tomorrow I will open it up and talk about the assault on the biblical truth of Imago Dei, the image of God, the rebellion. It's really amazing.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Light topic.
Yeah. Rob Yardley, Tommy Ice, Jeff Solwald, Rob Yardley, T.A. McMahon, Saturday. Big day, Saturday. And then the brat fry.
Yes. For Haiti.
Correct. You know what? Before we open up the topics today, Pastor Chris, I want to throw you a curve. I just thought of something. It's not and we're talking to Chuck Girard next week.
Yes.
What did you think about Jesus Revolution? Did you see it?
Yes, I did. It's another one of those examples where you just go, when artistic or creative license actually gets to the point where you lose some of the history, or you embellish things to the point where it isn't even resembling the actual events, that becomes kind of frustrating. So, are there some things in it that you go, this is really cool? It just reminds you of what it was like at the time and all that. I came into the movement later than everyone else that's in the movie, but I know a lot of the people who were there, and I've asked questions. And then so watching the movie, it's like, that's not how that went. That's not how that went. And then, you become a critic, and it's, if people don't know the history, they're not going to be so tripped up by the inaccuracies in it. So
you know a lot of people that were there, and a lot of things, like Mary probably does too, and some pastors that understand what was happening. There are some things about Pastor Chuck. My thing right now, I baptizing the feet and saying in the name of the Father, Son, baptize these feet. There's things that Pastor Chuck did not do, from what I understand. But overall, people have raved about it. People are really thrilled that another faith-based movie has done very well at the box office, and they have been all year long, and for many years. But Hollywood won't get the message, of course. They don't want to get the message, but they do really well, even if it's artistic license. And we won't talk about The Chosen because we want to maintain our audience through the podcast today. But where do we want to start? I think I misplaced my notes about Joe Biden's approval rating. You know what? I don't need the notes to talk about it, but I have no idea where I put them. 37%. And Pastor Chris, I'll just say, and I want to get your take on this too, my co-host, Mary. I've always predicted that 95% of those who vote Democrat will vote for whoever has a D behind their name. It doesn't matter. So I look at these and, the people that are really into politics are going, yeah, rock bottom, Biden's approval rating, only 37%. First of all, who are the 37 that approve the decline and the destruction of our nation? But you're thinking, okay, so these people will go back and they'll vote for whoever, next man up. So when you see the headlines, hey, even the Democrats, some Democrats, a majority don't want Biden to run again, who cares? Because what are your thoughts on that?
Well, of course, like you, explain the 37%.
Yeah.
What world are you living in?
Well, some people really want socialism, and they really hate America that much.
And they don't really care how you get there. And I mean, let's just be honest, and I try not to be uncharitable, but as far as the president's concerned, he's not in control of anything. It's the people who are behind him.
Yeah.
Seeing Susan Rice, make her exit, which is really pretty interesting, but she's one of the people behind the scenes that has done just untold amounts of damage to the country all the way back to the Obama years. So when I look at 37%, you wonder how accurate that actually is. How many people are going to say, oh, he's doing a fine job, just to sound like you're not some angry person living out in the suburbs somewhere. But if you were actually to ask those 37%, what has he done that you're so happy with, they're going to be really stuck for an answer.
I think so, too, because the economy is affecting everybody, unless you're a wealthy globalist elite.
Yeah.
Mary, what do you think?
Yeah, well, every news cycle, I don't know if it's a week or whatever, they'll say Biden ratings on all-time low. And I think, well, for as many times as they said that, how is there anyone left? Because they say this every week, all-time low, all-time
low.
And I do not understand even 37%. Are they just, they don't care, or they're just lifer Democrats? Well, and the other thing that's fascinating, too, is RFK Jr. is running for president. Here's a Kennedy, anti-vaxxer, has a great website. He tells the truth, kind of like Tucker Carlson. Okay, so this is a similar kind of mindset. I just want to get the truth out there. What are they going to do to him? And a lot of Americans might vote for him because he's a Kennedy and represents a sort of a golden age of America. So
Interesting.
But the media is going to chew him up and spit him out, I think.
Probably.
So I don't know what to expect there. And I've heard even conservatives say, I'd vote for him. I'd vote for him. So here's a wild card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I'd vote for just because he stands up for a lot. He stands up for our kids. He stands against the jabs and all that. So it's going to be an interesting cycle.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating. And we don't want to get all into politics, but we have to talk about these things because whoever is elected, in Biden's case, the people behind him pulling the strings or up above pulling the strings, they are implementing policy through executive order, through however they can do, and their party, if they have the majority, whatever happens there. So elections have major consequences, and I think we've got to, that's fun to talk about and speculate, but we've really got to get back to the local level because we've lost our schools, a lot of control locally. So I think that's a big push, the local level. You don't have to worry about as much in Texas, but I've seen some headlines in Texas. I just saw one this morning where they're encouraging kids in schools to chat with really strangers, and the parents don't need to know about this if they're confused about gender. I'm going, in Texas, anywhere, who thought this is a good idea?
This is the problem that you'll find in every state. It's just easier to identify in a red state. But when you get into the large cities, and especially the inner cities of the large cities, so take your pick, whether it's Dallas or Houston or San Antonio, whichever, and especially if it's a college town, that's always dominated by the academia that's there and the businesses that support the colleges and all the rest of it. So we all know how the professors, we all know how the administrations are politically, and we know that they're indoctrinating the kids that go there. So that part of the city is going to be completely blue from top to bottom. So Austin, any of the rest of them. It's when you get out into the counties that's where it becomes red state. But that's happening in the blue states, but it's happening all throughout the blue states. It's when you get to the red ones like where I live that you're able to see and look at it in any election, look at it county by county or even precinct by precinct and look at the colors. And so our state is dark red except for the cities, and the closer that you get to city center.
Same in Wisconsin.
Well,
Milwaukee.
I once thought Appleton was a conservative, and I thought Lawrence University. That's right.
I think it was a little closer to somewhere in the middle. From because I've lived there my whole life mostly. except when I was, just elementary, young age. But it's way worse than it was. It's much more liberal than it was.
Well, is it true that Austin is like the Madison of the South?
It's the San Francisco of Texas, is
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
that kind of crazy.
Yeah.
The stuff that you say, or that they say and that they implement as far as public policy, you just have to ask yourself, given the empirical evidence of everywhere that this has been tried for decades, what on earth makes you think that you're going to make it work there? And it's a miserable place to be unless you're just given over to the leftist view of things, you're going to hate life there.
Yeah, big cities. I mean, in every state around the country, and that's pretty much what we find. The same thing, demographic-wise. So let's transition now to what we wanted to talk about. One of the fascinating articles you've found by Mark Hitchcock, Mary, on Ezekiel 38, talking about Sudan and the Gog coalition. So why is this important? And open this up for us.
All right. Well, when this happened about a week ago or so about Sudan, I thought, okay, there's something more here than, everything has something more than we think. And we don't always know. We're just seeing the top of the iceberg. But Mark Hitchcock wrote an article, Sudan and the Gog Coalition. I mean, Sudan is in absolute disarray right now. And he says the chilling end times implications of Sudan's descent into chaos. And he opens it up by saying over 2,500 years ago, the Jewish prophet Ezekiel listed the nations that will conspire to attack Israel in the end times under the leadership of Gog. And he says, which probably means darkness. And you can read Ezekiel 38, but then he says the alliance will be commanded by Russia, Rosh and Magog, joined by Iran, Turkey, Tubal, Togarmah, and Gomer. And these nations represent the northern arm of the alliance, and they have been forging close ties, which they absolutely have. And Russia is the king of the north. But there's also a southern division of the Gog coalition. It includes Ethiopia and Put. And Mark says this. He says, ancient Put is modern Libya, the nation to the west of Egypt. Russia is deeply enmeshed in Libya today, interesting, in a variety of capacities. Another member of the coalition is just translated as Ethiopia, which is noted by the Hebrew word Cush. In Ezekiel's day, Cush was the land south of Egypt. Today, it is modern Sudan. So that's what Mark believes that is going on there. We're talking about not necessarily looking at today's boundaries, okay? And then he says Russia, okay? He explains what he believes is going on. Russia is lurking behind the chaos in Sudan, and this is exactly what we should expect in light of Ezekiel. He says there are two military factions. They're wrestling for control over the city and over the country's lucrative mineral resources, especially gold. Chris, what do you think about what's going on? And also, here's another really important part of this. He says, while the two battling factions are headed by rival Sudanese generals, there's another player that's been lurking around the shadows, a foreign country that has long had its eye on securing a port on Sudan's Red Sea coast, Russia. Chris, what do you think about all this stuff?
Whenever you read this kind of thing, and it's the way that geopolitics has been working for probably the last 20 years, but as we all know, that chaos just loves that kind of a vacuum. And so what you find is that country after country after country, when it begins to fail and fall apart, you have the vultures of our world kind of descend upon it, Russia and China in particular in the current context. So they begin to plunder the resources,
Right.
or they make some kind of alliance. It will help you out with this if you give us access to that. Look at what they did in Afghanistan. And so all the rare earth minerals here, basically, we're saying we're going to go to everything electric, and yet we're going to have to go to China to buy it. So you're either the people in our administration are either profoundly stupid, or they're frankly so beholden to those people. Frankly, China knows where the bodies are buried when it comes to the Bidens. So if we could just be honest. And same goes with Russia and Ukraine and all the rest of those places. Their fingerprints are all over it. So, of course, we'll be doing the bidding of theirs in kind of more the clandestine way. But the idea that Sudan is in a place of absolute turmoil, and the people that we're seeing going in trying to feed that or to take that vacuum, wait until we find out just who's been involved with the biolab there.
Yes, that's another whole thing here, the biolab that is being seized by, well, they're saying it's Russians who have seized the biolab there. And also Russia, this article also says Russia's intervention in Sudan is mainly through the Wagner Group, which is a Russian military organization mainly drawn from Russian prisons. They're the main Russian force in play in both Libya and Sudan. I mean, all these things happen. We have trouble keeping up with what's going on, okay? And all these things are just coming in wave after wave that you can hardly keep up with.
Well, Mark Hitchcock writes, Russia is lurking behind the chaos in Sudan. And it's exactly what we should expect in light of Ezekiel 38. But Sudan, they've been under basically civil war for as long as I can remember. I mean, it's really sad. And you think about the people there that are the innocent people and the Christians there that are getting slaughtered, and it happens, and we've got to pray for them. But, man, it just doesn't seem like our media won't report on it fairly. And I don't know. Yeah.
Well, here's one other thing here, too. This is kind of a big deal. Al Jazeera ran an article on April 17th headlined, Russian Mercenaries in Sudan. What is the Wagner Group's role? Subheadline explained, the Russian mercenary group has been accused of plundering Sudan's gold resources to bankroll operations in Ukraine. So, yeah, they get their hand in everything. And then it says, BRICS. Here's another headline, BRICS nations buying massive amount of gold ahead of plan to dethrone U.S. dollar. Oh, the plot thickens. According to an article from the Daily Hodl, H-O-D-L, China, which corporate media keeps telling us is broke, has added 102 tons of gold to its stockpiles since the start of the year. Tons of gold. They want to have a BRICS, which is a Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This is a economic model, and they want to dethrone the dollar. They want a gold-backed, so that the world will say, "Oh, look, U.S. fiat currency is garbage. Let's have a gold-backed currency to offer the world." So, wow, it's just, tentacles of this are just mind-blowing.
So where are we going to go now? It's a kind of a lengthy article, and we don't want to just read the whole thing, but there's some interesting points. Mark quotes CNN that you mentioned, and fulfilled prophecy. I think that's what we need to connect for people. Chris, can you help us do that a little bit? Because obviously the things that are going on, we even mentioned before we got on the air what's happening in Israel. There's been a coalition of nations surrounding them that for, I don't know, since I've been born, I think, but we're seeing more and more developments. But so what's happening in Africa that we can take as far as Bible prophecy?
That's the important part. The nice thing that we have from what Ezekiel had to say is he identifies the participants in the war that ultimately turns towards Israel.
Can you mention that again, the participants?
In brief, let's just do big picture because, again, remember, in Ezekiel's time, especially when he's referring back to the Table of Nations out of Genesis 10, so he's using the ancient of the ancient ways of identifying areas. They're not border states like we have now.
Okay.
So they're geographical areas that he's describing.
Good
so
point.
If you think about Israel and start to think to the north and to the east, that's the major players are mentioned there. And then you have the northern portion of Africa except for Egypt. That's who's mentioned as those who will coalesce. And the only thing that you have that really unites them, since it's not continent, it's not language, it's not even ethnicity, Islam really is the one galvanizing element that's there. So the important thing to remember is that without Ezekiel 36 and 37, Israel being made a nation again and coming back into the land, you don't have a reason for 38 and 39 to happen. They don't have anything to go after if Israel's not back in the land. They were displaced for 1,900 years. So since Ezekiel puts all of that information there of who it will ultimately be, it's always just been a matter of time. Well, when will you actually see the participants begin to galvanize and become coalesced, ready to do what they're doing? So the Persia, Russia, all of that has been in place for a very long time. Turkey and that whole eastern part of Europe has been ready for this for a very long time. What we're seeing take shape in the northern part of Africa is what's intriguing. So now that you're starting to see these kind of things, the collapse of Libya that happened under Gaddafi, that means that somebody's going to step into that breach, in this case Russia. Well, Russia has the major role from the north. So the idea that you have these alliances taking shape in our lifetime in ways we've never seen before,
right.
That's when you just go, well, that's interesting because it sure moves up the timetable a bit.
It does.
Well, and it all started kind of in 1948, right?
Kind of.
That's when things just kind of became very interesting prophetically.
Yes, and I don't want it to be lost on anybody that Russia wants that Red Sea port. That is what they are really after, and they're willing to do anything to get that. And I think they're very close to having that.
And they want the natural resources of oil and natural gas that now have been exploited by Israel for the first time in their history, and lots of it.
So help me understand. Mark writes under the prophecy fulfilled toward the very end of the article that Russia is bogged down in Ukraine, and there's some uncertainty now. But he said Russia has deep developing ties with Iran, Turkey, Sudan, and Libya. And in other words, all the allies mentioned in Ezekiel 38. He said these aren't just political ties, but military and economic ones. It's hard for the average person to understand the whys unless you go to the Bible and go, okay, some of this seems like it's coming together prophetically, and the average person would probably not grasp the meaning of that.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at it, you can say Ezekiel doesn't give you any of that information, other than you've come to take a plunder. That's all that you hear mentioned. So what we are supposed to be able to do is say, we know who the participants are, so all we need to do is look at what it is that they're saying outwardly, or their actions will tell you what brings them together. So it's economic, it's military, as you've said. They share a common hatred of Israel, and most nations on the planet do, including ours and our current administration. And most people can't even tell you why they hate them, because it's a spiritual matter that they're blinded to.
Right.
That's a really good point. It is almost an irrational hatred at times.
Very much so.
It can, because people don't even hide it anymore. Usually it was kind of under wraps, but now they'll just blurt it out, and they can't explain why. They can't defend. Oftentimes, we talked about this a little bit before in another topic, but people on the left or people with that mindset, maybe the reprobate mind, can't defend their positions. And in this case, the hatred of Israel, and not supporting Israel as a nation,
Right.
And
the desire to understand what's going on in the Middle East. Because when I got saved, I would look at that and my head would explode.
Look at what?
At what's going on in the Middle East in general, and has been for decades. I would look at that as a young adult and go, I can't even begin to grasp it. But then I opened my Bible. So I think believers should hopefully have an interest, just by virtue of the fact that they're believers, and to try and at least parse out and have some kind of understanding. Go to the Bible first, of course, understand what is being said there. And then I think it's a lot easier to understand what's going on over there, because it's complicated. Look at all the players we're talking about just in this short period of time. So I think as believers, we should have a active understanding of how the Middle East functions, if we can.
In case we don't get a chance to do it, I'm sorry for interjecting here, but when you think about Ezekiel and these kind of things that we're talking about, we were talking about this between the three of us before the program started, and when it comes to the whole Ezekiel and other passages like that, the idea that nations will rise up against Israel is something that's pretty well written out as far as the prophetic passages. What you don't hear much as far as the scriptures are concerned, and it's never addressed that I can think of in the most direct sense, is all the internal strife and trouble that is presenting a downward pressure on the government in Israel from within its own people. And that's my topic for when the opening of the conference is what's happening internally in their own politics, plus the Orthodox, the religious, are starting to talk about things they've never spoken of before. The revealing of the Messiah, they're reading the prophets. These kind of things are mind-blowing that this is taking place. So all throughout, I'll show some pictures of it, but all throughout the country, there are pictures of a particular rabbi who's been dead almost 30 years. His name was Menachem Schneerson. And they believed he was the Messiah at the time that he was alive. They still believe many of the devoted followers of his, which are more now than since he died, oddly enough, believe that he'll be resurrected. And there's posters everywhere throughout Israel.
Did he live in New York, or did he live?
New York.
Okay,
Yeah.
He had a lot. I remember reading about him and actually kind of following in that, and then he died, and I thought, okay, now what? Well,
I have a video from my phone that we're driving through Tel Aviv when everybody said that they're on the